Yeah, so a lot of what we understand about design thinking, at least in my case, a lot of what I understand in design thinking actually has come from observing you and your team in terms of how you approach a particular problem. Okay, and I would even admit to the fact that I have what we recently in one of our last sessions defined as the engineer's disease. The moment you get a problem, you just want to solve the problem. You don't want to stop and think about whether there could be something more behind it. Okay, so that's an approach that we started using after we understood the impact of it. Okay, so one of the questions I wanted to ask you is there is a difference between design thinking and engineering design, and they do meet at some point, irrespective of the domain. So whether it is mechanical engineering, whether it is instrumentation or electronics, control systems, whatever. But these two eventually meet at some point. There is something before that, there is something after that for both of these areas again.
Yes.
Okay, so how would you characterize it? So how would you characterize this flow on both sides of this equation?
So actually, it's not about engineering and design thinking, right? The whole purpose of either engineering or design thinking is to solve a problem, right? And design thinking sort of essentially lets you admit that none of engineering or design or finance or manufacturing is going to singularly solve your problem, right? So design thinking approach, at the very first accepts that it's not a problem that can be solved by a singular stream, right? And tries to bring in multiple diverse opinions. I actually have a lot of respect for engineers because they do some really cutting edge stuff, right? But the mistake that we might be doing is saying that this can solve all my problems, right? Design thinking also involves a lot of design doing, and design doing in a sense like form or aesthetics or CMF, right? Or interaction alone is also not going to solve all the problems. But design thinking is an umbrella, which says that you need to have diverse opinions before you start solving anything. And that's where you take a step back, seeing that rather than not just running with what we seem as a problem is the problem and trying to solve it, we come back a step, right? And we say, oh, by the way, this is the technical problem. Are there any other issues that we need to solve along with the technical problem, right? For example, if the pressure control wall, right? If it's working at, let's say, 10% accuracy, okay? And I want to run it at 3% accuracy or 1% accuracy. Is it technologically not possible today? I think it's very much possible, right? But is 10% a problem? And if it's the problem, whose problem is it, right? And then you sort of solve it from that angle. You might not need to go to 1% or 0.5%. You might rediscover that essentially he's saying that I want 5% is good enough, but 10% I am not okay with. Right? So these are the conversations that you need to have with your users. And every designer, not just the designer per se, but mechanical designer or the sales guy or marketing guy. So design thinking is more of an all-encompassing approach, where you put user in the center and then start to look at the problem and say, is this the real problem or are there more facets to this problem?
Yeah, exactly. So I remember this because there are a lot of projects on which we have worked where we realized that the original definition of the problem actually migrated to something which was very, very different after the design thinking and the need finding exercises were completed. So that's definitely an eye opener for us. Okay, especially from the perspective of engineering design or at least industry relevance.